It's a new day and another crypto company announcement about how the SEC is dropping its suit against it. But the only thing that we've actually been seeing is these company talking points. On the SEC side, we just keep seeing the SEC has declined to comment. Between the company's talking points of what they want us to hear and the SEC silence, there's actually a lot to unpack. So let's unpack it. What we really want to know is how much of a win is this for crypto? Why is the SEC so silent on it? And what should we be looking out for next? So first, is this a win for the crypto community? That depends. It's definitely a win for these companies. And they've got a lot of comms people and a lot of lawyers selling you a story that puts them in the best light. The reality was that they weren't always great cases to begin with. And that's actually terrible for the public. Let's step back and remember that when it comes to the government litigating cases, government generally has a very high win percentage, between 80 to 90%. And we want them to have that kind of win percentage because we want it that when the government is going to spend its limited resources on a case, the actors are actually bad actors and the government is putting its best foot forward. These cases weren't an example of the government putting its best foot forward. Now remember, the SEC was created after the Great Depression, after the stock market collapsed. We want them here to prevent scam artists from hyping up useless companies. When it came to these crypto cases, the SEC wasn't going after the actual projects themselves. They went after the actors and the software providers that were in the middle layer. That would be like if Tesla stock were a scam. Rather than going after Tesla for hyping up and scamming people to buy its stock/token, it went after the New York Stock Exchange. Going after the New York Stock Exchange doesn't give the public comfort about whether or not that stock that was being sold was actually a scam and what would make it not a scam. How can some average person like you and me identify the difference between a Bitcoin quality project and a scam project? Let's just look at the numbers. On the public stock markets, NASDAQ has about 4,000 public companies. On NYSE, they list about 2,200 companies. Right now, there is 11.9 million different kinds of tokens. And that number has been skyrocketing. In the last year, it went from 2 million a year ago to what we see now, added 10 million tokens in just a year. Why is the SEC so silent on this when there's been this steady drumbeat of crypto companies announcing that the SEC is dropping its lawsuit against them? My guess is that the SEC leadership is in a tough spot. They're backtracking from what the agency had done before. As a public policy matter, we don't like it when agencies flip-flop. That makes it very hard for the public to know what is expected behavior. Now that the crypto market has exploded, the pressure is really on for the SEC to give the public some guidance about how it can safely identify Bitcoin quality projects and scam projects. Now, to answer the third question of what should we expect next, there's a couple of things to remember. One, even though these crypto companies are all making these big announcements and chalking it up as a big win on behalf of the community, it's important to put these crypto companies' talking points in some sort of context because they're not going to do it for you. As an example, Coinbase. Big win in that the SEC is dropping all of its charges. It's also the same company. It had a $50 million fine in New York for having a bad compliance program. It similarly had a £3.5 million settlement in the FCA over in the UK. We have Binance with a $4.5 billion fine from the Department of Justice. Robinhood just had to pay another $45 million settlement to the SEC. Another fine to the California Department of Justice for $3.9 million. Gemini had to pay a $37 million fine to New York and return $1.1 billion to its customers. It also had a separate fine from the CFTC for $5 million. As we've seen with these companies, it's not black or white, whether or not they're good actors or bad actors. Now, one final point I'll leave you with. Of all of these cases that we're seeing drop, one of them, the Coinbase case, stands out in particular. That one was sitting at the appellate level, and the case had to do with the statutory language around investment contract. And Coinbase was claiming that in order for the SEC to have jurisdiction over an investment contract, there needed to be a contract signed by two people first. That has historically not been the case. The investment contract term is something that Congress created as a term of art for going after Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes and investment club schemes that have scammed people out of tons of money. If Coinbase had one for people in the crypto space, that would have been like saying, just because the word contract is in smart contract, that means that it carries with it all sorts of rights and obligations signed by certain parties. We know that to not be true, in which case then the SEC would not be able to go after Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes and investment scam schemes. The first players to abuse that weren't going to be crypto players. It was going to be traditional finance. That on that narrow issue that went up to the appeals court, SEC dropped that query, whether in the future we're going to see traditional finance make the claim SEC has overstepped its boundary. We may have scammed people out of their money, but the SEC has no jurisdiction here because it decided to drop its case against Coinbase on the definition of investment contract. And that's not a crypto issue. That's just a general financial term. And so it applies to us, traditional scammers, as much as to crypto. Time will tell if anyone starts using that argument. But it's not something that the crypto companies are highlighting for you, and it's not something that the SEC is going to highlight either. I hope you found this useful.